Um, I feel like I can't answer this without being like extremely political. There's
Well,
certain
let's
people-
assume the first thing you would do is make everything good for everyone in the world. We'll
make
assume that's the
everything
first
good
thing.
for everyone in the world is a great way to put it.
So today we have our guest, Tatiana Maslany. Thank you so much. We are so psyched today to talk to you about a million things. First, I want to get into your new podcast, Power Trip.
Yes.
Yes, I got to listen through some episodes, and I am really loving this era we're doing of narrative podcasts. So please tell everyone all about Jane.
Yes. So Jane is someone who whose kidney failed her very early in her life and had to be like constantly in this cycle of transplants that didn't take, or she's just been sick her whole life. She ends up getting a kidney transplant from a black market source that gives her superpowers. And these superpowers allow her to basically like command people to do whatever she wants, which is a power she doesn't wield with a lot of grace, I'll say.
Not terribly responsible with her ability to know. So I gotta ask, if you suddenly had the power to be able to make anyone do anything, what do you do? Who do you use it on?
I feel like I can't answer this without being like extremely political. There's
Well, let's
people-
assume the first thing you would do is make everything good for everyone in the world. We'll
make
assume that's the
everything
first
good
thing.
for everyone in the world is a great way to put it.
We'll assume that that's the first thing you want to do. So next, what's a selfish thing that you want to do?
A selfish thing that I want to do is command people to take those price tags off all those clothes. Free clothes for me. But that's once everything's good for everyone else in the world.
Yes, of course. The first thing you do is make the world better. The second thing you do is you're the vocal version of having one of those guns that takes off the tags on clothes so you don't beep on your way out of Target. In this, you are working, Lisa Lowell plays your mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
How was that? That is so wild. I am such a fan of Lisa Lowell, by the way. How has it been working with her?
Yeah, I mean, Lisa Loeb is somebody who I listened to when I was like in that wonderfully angsty, like early teens time when like, I feel like there were all these incredible women coming forward in terms of like rock music and pop, and like had this very distinctive kind of like vulnerable, personal, like edgy thing. And she was in that world for me, and I definitely loved her. So I didn't know that she acted, and it was fun to get to, hear, because we don't actually record anything together, which is always very odd, but to hear them put together our two performances was really cool.
I think a lot of folks now understand that a lot of times when you're doing these, you're like at home in your own booth and working with other people. What is it like? I mean, obviously you are someone who knows what it's like to just be talking to yourself sometimes in a scene. So I imagine that this is something that you're probably more comfortable with than other people. But what does it wind up being like when you finally do get to hear the finished product? Because to our ears, it doesn't sound like you're not in the same room.
Yeah, and that's a testament to the director too, who's able to, she was like, Kaylin was so able to like bring our performances together by like knowing where she was heading with a scene, knowing how she might direct the other actors and all of that. So it becomes quite seamless after the edit and all of that. But it is like just throwing out as many options as you can. It's kind of like a cartoon in that way, I think, and just expecting that at some point it'll sound like I asked a question that has been answered this way or whatever, Yeah.
Right, totally. But yeah, so obviously speaking of Orphan Black, have you found that it is easier for you to be able to do projects where it's you on a green screen or it's you, in a booth vocally? Was that something that helped you maybe be able to have that power to be able to give options and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, like in so many ways, Orphan Black was just such a muscle building job, like in the sense of like so many different challenges thrown at me that, and I was always working. So you just get warm doing that. You know, the hardest thing for an actor is not being able to act. You know, you get very rusty, you get very nervous, you get all of that stuff. Like, it's just the hardest thing. So being on a show where you're number 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, you know, like, you can't help but get warm and start to, like, with all these different characters, stretch my ability to vocally specify somebody or physically specify them or differentiate them. And so I think that really lends itself to podcasts, or these like great narrative podcasts, where the voice is the only kind of indication you have of like where your imagination can take you in terms of how this person looks and how they are moving physically, or if they're reaching across and touching their scene partner, but doing it all through the voices is super, you know, specific.
Right. So do you find that, because again, this is another talent that you are bringing to, obviously we've got She-Hulk coming up, and you are playing, She-Hulk is such an iconic character because of the way that Jennifer is able to also be She-Hulk. Do you find that you were able to find different ways with the physicality or with the voice to be able to differentiate the two different modes of one person?
Yeah, the voice definitely stays the same. But there are things like, how does it feel for a 5'4" person to suddenly be 6'7" and walking into the same rooms that she did when she was 5'4"? There's something different about like your relationship to space and your relationship to your body. And like, also with She-Hulk, she's obviously the strongest woman on the planet. And so she like can do nothing and throw somebody through a brick wall, you know? So playing with that thing of like someone who's not a fighter, but is suddenly in a body of a fighter, and suddenly has the muscle mass of a fighter. You know, how do you do that? And where's the sort of like, where does Jen sort of still exist in that? Is fun to play with. Did
you do any of did you have to take any fight classes? Did you wind up having to, tell me about those.
Well, not so much fight classes. What I did was work with the stunt people who ended up also playing She-Hulk with me, because they would do the stunts, but they'd do them in the mocap suit. So you could basically make She-Hulk doing these amazing stunts that the stunt people did. But the two that I worked with, Sarah and Matt, who were also playing She-Hulk, what we worked on was like physically finding a vocabulary that was how She-Hulk moves, that's different from how, you know, Captain America moves, or like these people who, or like people who are trained fighters. How does she move differently? Does she have, you know, ease with her body, or is she kind of uncomfortable, or does she sort of start feeling herself because she can suddenly do this thing that she didn't know she was capable of? How does that change how she walks? Like, where does her confidence start to build? So it became more of a like character emotional kind of physical stuff that we were doing than like, this is how you punch or this is how you kick, you know?
You know, between this and She-Hulk and Orphan Black, and you have gotten to play so many different kinds of character. Is there one type that you have not gotten to play yet that you would like to be able to explore?
Ooh. No, I never know that. I never, like, you know, when Jane came along, I was like, I'd never really done that kind of character in terms of like, what's so great about Power Trip is I was able to like live inside of her head for all of those episodes. You really hear all of her like run-on thoughts and like all of her sort of like flaws in the way she thinks or sees people or sees herself. So to really like be inside of somebody like that and like be inside of their thought pattern is like a cool, really I was just saying invasive, really invasive way to act. But I mean like internal, that's what I mean. It's like a really internal process. And it's a comedy, and she's like, you know, got a dark sense of humor, and she's a little bitter and a little angry and all that stuff. So that was like a fun new character for me. But similarly, you know, when I read She-Hulk, I was like, this is so surprising. This is not a character I've played before. She feels very close to me, but also there's all these differences, and I'm so curious about this.
That is so fantastic. Did you get a chance to catch up on any of the comics, or did you want to go in just fresh with the MCU? You read the comics.
I did, yes. Oh yeah. As soon as I got the audition, I started reading the comics, but then really when I got the part, I kind of went through chronologically and read from the 80s on, and was surprised at how long that character had existed and like how many different artists have interpreted her over the years physically, or like even her attitude kind of shifts, but she always has that sort of like irreverent sense of humor. So it was cool to see that and to sort of let that live inside me and draw from the comics as much as I drew from the script.
Right, because you play a lot of roles that have humor in them, but I would say that a lot of what you've done has been more dramedy, is where this feels like this is very much a comedic role for you.
Yeah.
Did you have to do anything different to prepare for that, or just kind of let go and let She-Hulk?
Yeah, exactly. That's like the best way I could. I wish I had learned to say that, just let go and let She-Hulk, because it is really just like, Jessica Gao wrote these, and all the writers wrote these incredible scripts. As long as you let that live, you don't have to add anything extra. It's just like play the truth of that moment with those great lines and those great jokes, and it'll sing. You know what I mean? It's definitely like a mentality that makes the set very fun to be on. Very different from like a heavy drama, but it's basically the same skill set.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much once again for joining us here. Everyone, go check out Power Trip. New episodes premiere on Thursdays, and the finale premieres September 8th. Thank you again so much, Tatiana, for joining us today. This has been such a treat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a great one.
You too.